I'm so concerned that what we're doing in schools all the way through the universities right now are counter to what we know the psychological science teaches us. I was talking to Dr. Mannion recently, and we talked about this. If somebody has been really violently attacked,
Yeah,
or maybe
yeah,
they've been raped or something like that, and you're going into a class where that's going to be some of the content, letting them know that, and maybe they decide that's not the class for them right now, totally get it, 100%, give them a chance to heal from the inside out. But some of these things that are just political views or economic views that they say, well, that's traumatizing to me. I'm going to need to be in a safe space. I'm sorry. That's counter to psychological science. In psychological science, if there's something that is not a genuine threat and someone is reacting to it, in psychological science, we say we do exposure therapy, we do systematic desensitization, we do even immersion therapy. We do all different kinds of things to get them to where they can accommodate to that, they can cope with that. But what's happening in the educational system right now is we're protecting them from that instead of teaching them to cope with that. That
yeah,
seems to be wrong to me. It
yeah.
just
It
seems to me
backfires.
wrong.
We are so online on that one. First of all, I think what we've done is we've misinterpreted trauma. There are some children who clearly have been through trauma. Other kids, I think it's grief. Grief is going to dissipate. But the majority of our kids are going through disappointment. And one of the ways you get through life, I learned this again when I was working on Army bases. Navy SEAL said, you learn to chunk the fear. So what do you mean you chunk the fear? I said, well, our goal is to get through the battle. But if we thought about the whole battle, it'd be overwhelming. So instead, what we do is think of it in little chunks. Like I'm going to get through the first 5 minutes, then the next 10 minutes, then the next. That is a fabulous thing to tell a child. I know you're overwhelmed getting to school, so put your foot out the door. The next day, put 2 feet out the door. Next day, walk down to the mailbox. Chunk the child's fear, but don't sugarcoat it and bubble wrap him so he's having to not do it at all. He'll never be able to get through little teeny safe risks at a time till he finally says, I got it. I did it.
Yeah, and that's the psychological science, cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical therapy. You deal with the reality that's facing you. And with the world opening back up right now, which pretty much we're seeing, and I hope it continues, you say that parents expect their kids to just snap out of it after 2 years of pandemic, but you have talked to so many of these kids, and you say they're suffering from really severe separation anxiety. What do parents do to transition them back into their lives?
If you're dealing with, first of all, you always figure out as the mom, as the dad, what's the one little thing that's really causing this kid stress. For a lot of kids, it's they've been faced with the loneliness. They haven't seen friends for a while. So now they're in a state of angst of now, how do I get back on the scene? The fascinating thing on this one is loneliness is all matter of learning social skills by practicing them, exercising them. And you can do that in your own home. The three most highly correlated traits of well-liked kids: they say hello, they encourage one another, high five, good job, and they always look at the color of the talker's eyes. They don't look down, that makes you look wimpy. You look up. Now, how do you do that at home? Not like at 6 o'clock, we're going to learn how to be, socially tapped. It's like, okay, we're going to go to the supermarket today. But as we do it, or as we walk through the street, let's start modeling those skills. The first step is just get them back on the track so they feel safer and more secure with one another face to face. They've been looking at screens, a lot of them, for 2 years, and it's a little bit threatening. But don't say you don't have to, sweetie pie. Let's bring over the one play date. Let's start playing. Maybe you're overwhelmed for 2 hours, so bring the play date over for 15 minutes and gradually keep stretching them. Don't bubble wrap them. Figure out how to help them get back on track, slowly taking them from where they are and keep on supporting them until they get there.
Yeah, that's the successive approximations. Maybe they used to take it for granted to be 3 hours or spend the night with a friend. So maybe now you do 15 minutes, then 30 minutes, then you go to the mall with them and take them both to the food court or something and let them spend time with more stimulation. But now you did something that I found really intriguing. You have gone around the country, either in person or Zoom, and sat down with groups of kids. You spent half hour with these kids, and one of the things you asked them was, "Give me a word that describes you, just one word that describes you right now." What did they tell you?
Number one, I don't care where it is and what zip code, overwhelmed. Unbelievable. It's like the top one that keeps coming up. I'm just overwhelmed. Another one that keeps coming up is stress, lonely, unmotivated. Some kids call it lazy, other kids call it unmotivated, but it's almost pessimistic. I don't know if I can, this world is so different. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. They're so honest that when you ask them, they always come up with the, here's what I am. And then we do the next question. So what's causing it? And the fascinating thing is very often it's the overwhelm because I don't know where to start. I have so much work and I'm never going to be able to catch up. You know, Dr. Phil, another one that keeps coming up is I don't want to disappoint my parents. I'm
Really?
really worried about, they put so much time and energy into it. I know grades are important, but I just don't know if I can keep doing this. We have got to, first of all, recognize our kids are struggling. They're hurting, and some of them are afraid to tell us where they're at. So this is maybe the first step is step in and realize your kid is not where they used to be. Look, if you're talking about a 10-year-old, over the last 2 years, a 10-year-old has already lost 20% of their life in the last 2 years if they haven't had the experience. You're not going to have the kid where he was before. You got to take him from where they are now and gently keep helping them get back on track. One thing you may want to do is, connect with the teacher and find out what the child's current abilities are, if it's learning, or if you're seeing the child at home, how's the child behaving in the classroom? You and I know kids behave differently in different situations. So
Yeah.
find out what's going on and what others who care desperately about your kids are seeing, because that's going to help you know, so what am I going to do about it?
Well, when they said overwhelmed, and I know you followed up with questions, were they overwhelmed with the academic gap, or was it also the social anxiety? Was it all of this rolled in together? Had they lost so much schoolwork wise that they didn't think they could ever catch up? What was it that was overwhelming to them?
If it's a junior in high school or a senior, they're scared to death about what's the next path. Am I going to make it into college? How am I going to go there? But I think what's happening with the overwhelmed point is it's the buildup. It's not one thing. It's this steady buildup. I always tell parents it's like building blocks. When you see your kid playing with the building blocks, think of each building block as one stressor. And you keep building and building. And then who's pulling one out or who's putting something in its place? After a while, pretty soon they tumble. And that's what the kids are saying. Where do I start? The homework is so much. That's the first thing. And they'll tell you, and I can't focus like I used to be. So it's their attention span is also shorter than they were. If that stress is building, what goes? We all know it. We're zoomed out. Our own stress is going up. Watch out. They're also sleep deprived. So they're not sleeping as they used to do because their stress is building. It's all this cumulative concept that's coming up.
Well, you said you asked them about stress, and they said before COVID, they rated themselves an average of 5, during COVID, 7, and now as they're coming out on a 1 to 10, they were 9 to 11.
That's the shocker. I was, whoa, because I was writing that on chart paper. Each one of these is a focus group of 10, 15 kids that are representing the pulse of their school. But when I kept looking at it, why is it rising when it looks like we're starting to move out of COVID? We're now looking at what we call the aftermath, I think. It's the effect that they realize they're almost to the point where maybe we're going to be safe. Maybe we're going to take our masks off. Who knows? But it's this buildup of now I don't know where to start. I've got so much that I've lost. I'm overwhelmed with it. And that's the piece that we need to help them start chunking down. So where do you start? What's the first thing? I think that's the other thing. They look at the homework, they look at the assignment. I said, what skills do you need that would have helped you? And the fascinating thing is many of the high school kids says time management. I just don't know how to manage my time. I've got so much on my plate. Where do I start?
You talked about asking kids what was really important to them, and
Mm-hmm.
parents didn't make the top of the list or even close.
That was the other shocker, because many of these schools also did very simple little surveys. I asked them to ask the kids 3 simple questions, and the kids could answer anonymously. Question number 1 is, what do you appreciate about what your teachers are doing? Question number 2, what do you appreciate about your parents? Question number 3 is, what's the one word that describes you most? Teachers came up as the caring champions. I love the lunch duty teacher. She always sings. She makes me feel good when I walk to the cafeteria. I love the bus driver. He always says, hey, come on in. It's going to be okay. The teacher who's meeting me at the door. Parents, that was the devastating one. About half of the kids said that what they appreciated most of their family, hang on to your hat on this one, was their dog. The dog.
Yeah.
The second one was an older sibling who was helping them. When I said, what are the things your parents are doing? It was making me food or taking me to school. It was a few kids who appreciated sitting down and talking to me, but the kids also said, I think as the parents don't know what to tell us. I said, so what would you suggest a parent do to make you feel better? Well, sometimes when they don't know what to say, just sit there calmly next to me, just so I know that you're there. It's okay. You don't have to say anything, but maybe just rub my back or say it's going to be okay, or laugh like you used to. We're not laughing as a family anymore, and it's really making me feel bad. These are juniors in high school.
Yeah, and a lot of that is because these parents are experiencing a lot of stress right now too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, absolutely, we are so stressed. They're worried about finances. They're worried about health. Maybe they've gone through my business, now the gas prices, now a war. It's just the build up, build up, build up. But it's also a time when we got to realize, as the parent, the single most important thing that really helps our kids, other than we love them when we like them and we've got the firm guidelines. But when all the research on child development comes in and what's a really effective parent, number 2 on the list is we manage stress so it doesn't spill over to our kids. So we can teach all these kids coping skills. I think every once in a while we need to take the deep breath ourselves and be the mirror so that our children are seeing somebody relax so that they can be relaxed.